When I'm with my girl, she be rockin' that Wilma Flintstone. When it's time to rock the bed, then I get my friend home.
What's up, my wizards? It's Dev from SBMTG down there on the YouTube.com. Boy, do we like magic. And I've got another deck tech for you today. As usual, I've been pretty reliable with that lately. And today I'm really excited because I get to give you probably the craziest combo deck in Standard right now, Cheerios. What a silly name for a deck, right? The reason it's called that is because we're playing a lot of stuff that costs 0 mana, and 0 kind of looks like a Cheerio. Like, it's a bit of a stretch, a deck name, but at least it's not like name of 3 color combination plus control, which is basically how we name decks nowadays. It's not boring. It's named after breakfast cereal, and that's really cool. Anyway, I've been talking for a minute. What did this deck actually do? What am I babbling about? Basically, we're going to be using Aetherflux Reservoir and playing sort of like a storm deck. We're going to be using Reservoir plus Paradoxical Outcome and a bunch of things that cost 0 mana that we can just put right back into our hand with Outcome, draw a bunch of cards, replay the things for 0, and eventually get our storm count, how many spells we played that turn, up to like 9 or 10 and just kill them with Reservoir in one turn. Sounds pretty tough, and it kind of is, but it's glorious when you actually pull it off. And there's a lot of talk on the interwebs right now about this deck, and there's a lot of different builds for it. We'll talk about those as we go on here. I think at the end of the deck I'll reserve a pretty good chunk of space for cards that could be in the deck or ways the deck could be built. But the build I'm going to show you right now, the one that I've had the most success in actually getting to combo off, is a blue-white build. So let me go ahead and tell you about it. Well, first of all, I should let you know that we're going to play 4 copies of Aetherflux Reservoir, the important combo piece. I mean, we want to find it every single game or else we kind of can't win, so let's play all 4 copies of it. And this is how this works. I'm going to go ahead and run through this with you. Basically, here's a chart. If you cast 1 spell, you gain 1 life. If you have one of these out. That's obvious, right? If you cast 2 spells, you will have gained 3 life that turn. You cast 3 spells, you will have gained 6 life. 4 spells get you 10 life, 5 spells will give you 15 life for the turn at least. 6 spells will get you 21 life. If you cast 7 spells, you just gain 28 life this turn. 8 spells get you to 36 life, which is crucial. If your opponent hasn't pressured your life total so much, then 36, 8 spells is usually enough to do it. If you cast 9 spells in one turn, you get 45 life, which is almost always going to do it. And if you cast somehow 10 spells in one turn, you're guaranteed to do it because you will have gained 55 life in that one turn. While we're on the subject of numbers, you may ask yourself, what happens if more than 1 Aetherflux Reservoir is out? Usually you can do this math on the fly while you're casting spells, and it's not as complicated as it sounds, but there is a very complicated formula out there for what exactly does happen if you have more than 1 Reservoir out. It's here, and I need to probably give the credit to Frank Karsten, and I am a reliable straight C math student that hasn't taken a math class in literally a decade, so I can't decipher this crazy mix of puzzles. I don't know this is just a bunch of symbols to me. This is basically hieroglyphics. But I'm sure the people in the comments section will both know how to read it and call me a dum-dum. But just wanted to have this here for reference. We're also going to play the full 4 copies of Paradoxical Outcome in the deck. Paradoxical Outcome, just another card we sort of have to find every single game if we're hoping to storm off. Now, I will say you don't have to win all in one turn, especially if you're not playing against a super heavy aggro deck that's going to pressure you every single turn and hit you for 10, 12, 15. You know? Like, as long as you're not playing against heavy aggro, you can grind a game out over the course of a few turns, but after you run out of gas, it becomes really hard to do that because you're only casting like 1 spell a turn. Although multiple copies of Reservoir can help with that. But Paradoxical Outcome, just let me get back on that. You know, if we pick up, say, a Bone Saw and a Cathar's Shield, we draw 2 cards, we play those 2 artifacts again for free, maybe we drew another free artifact, play it. I mean, we're up to 4 or 5 spells pretty easily after a Paradoxical Outcome. Now you know the basic combo pieces that are in the deck. Let's talk about the things that facilitate the combo actually working. We'll start with free stuff. And I'm going to go all the way with free stuff. We're going to play 4 of 3 different free cards here, and that's 4 Bonesaw, 4 Cathar's Shield, and 4 Endless One. Now I have seen a few different articles about this deck and stuff on Reddit. I've been doing a lot of research on this deck. And like I said, there's a bunch of different ways to build it, but it's almost unanimous that you don't do what I am doing here. But this is how I've had the most success with the deck, is just go all in on free stuff and play all 12 free cards that we can. A lot of people are just playing like 2 Cathar's Shield or maybe 3 Bonesaw and 2 Endless One. There's definitely different ways you can do this, but I want to combo out. I want to Storm, and that's basically my #1 priority. So I've played all 12 slots of free cards here, and it has worked for me, at least. I don't know why the conventional wisdom is to not do that, but it has worked for me much better than only playing like 2 shields. So this is what I'm recommending, but try it out and see what your success rate is like. Now we want to fill out the rest of the deck with cards that draw us cards on the cheap. A couple of reasons for that. We want them to be cheap so that we can use them in the early game to help us draw into our combo pieces, and we want them to be cheap so that while we're comboing off, we can afford to have the mana to play them, basically, and draw more cards and draw more into combo stuff. So a couple of reasons we want cheap card draw things in the deck. But we also want a good mix of spells and permanents. We want permanents because we want as many things that we can pick back up with a paradoxical outcome as possible. So good push-pull of sort of how we craft the rest of the deck here. So let me show you the path I went down. We're going to play 4 copies of Terrarian and 3 copies of Prophetic Prism, which was a 4 of for a long time, but I wanted to make room for a 1 of something else I'll tell you about here in just a second. But Prism is good. Early game we play it, it draws us a card, it draws us into the combo a little bit more, hopefully. And then late game we can pick it up with an outcome and then play it for just 2 more, draw another card, hopefully a free artifact or something. So I have liked Prism as something that not only draws us cards early game, but we can pick back up and play for relatively cheap, draw another card, increase our storm count. Terrarian is a little bit more frustrating, but I think still worthy of a slot. Now, Terrarian can do some good stuff for us. It can basically fix our mana for free and draw a card for free at the same time. And it only costs 1, so if we pick it up with a paradoxical outcome, we can play it again for just 1 mana, increasing our storm count. Problem is, it can't do any of those things all on the same turn. You know what I mean? It'd be nice if we could pick this up with an outcome, play it again, fix our mana for free, draw the free card, increasing our storm count, drawing more stuff to storm out with. But we can't do those things all in the same turn. That kind of sucks. But I think the card is still definitely good enough to warrant the 4-of slot in the deck. Another creature here. We're not playing too many of them, but the ones we are playing are important. We're going to play 4 copies of Thraben Inspector here. Just the 1 mana, survives Liliana, that's worth mentioning, and also gives us an artifact that we can sack to draw a card. Something else that draws us cards for very cheap. And with Paradoxical Outcome, we can leave the clues out. It's not like they sweep the clues or anything. So that's good too. There's a lot of good things about Inspector. Mostly this is going to be an early game blocker for you. But, you draw it off of an outcome, play it for very, very cheap. You got an artifact sitting there that'll draw you a card. A lot of good things about Inspector. Either blocks in the early game or is a very cheap way to keep our storm count going in the late game. So I really like Inspector in the deck, and it's one of the entire reasons I've gone white at all. We're going to play 4 pretty obvious, I think, copies of Anticipate in the deck. Something very, very cheap that not only draws us cards, sort of, but allows us to look at the top 3 and pick the best piece. Really, really good for combo decks. And it's instant speed, which means something special in this deck. Both with this and Paradoxical Outcome, it's important to pay attention to the fact that, and a lot of people have pointed this out, this is an important thing with this deck, that if you have an Aetherflux Reservoir in play, and you play any spell, let's just say Bonesaw, but this works with any spell, and then play an instant on the stack on top of that spell, you're responding to your own spell at this point, then Aetherflux Reservoir will read that 2 spells have been played when both triggers go off. Say the Bonesaw was your first spell of the turn, and Anticipate was your second spell of the turn. They'll both gain you 2 life. Very important to remember. And no, I don't know what this is that I was doing at the end of that. I don't know what that was, sorry. And last creature here, we're going to play 2 copies of Glintnest Crane in the deck. Basically copies 5 and 6 of Aetherflux Reservoir, but they can also draw into like Terrarians and Prophetic Prisms, whatever. But mostly we're looking to play 5 and 6 copies of Reservoir here, and they sort of draw us a card as long as there's an artifact in the top 4, and they're a creature that can sort of stave off like flying creatures. That's important too. So a little bit of defense, costs very, very cheap and nets us a card. Just a lot of good things about Crane. I'm not going to go full 4 of here or anything, but I think a 2 of is warranted. And to finish off the main deck, we're just going to play 1 copy of Crush of Tentacles, which I do really like in the deck, despite the fact that it makes us pick up our Aetherflux Reservoir. That's not great, but sometimes it's another win condition. It gives us a huge 8/8 Octopus. It clears out their side of the board, which Paradoxical Outcome can't do, and sometimes I kind of wish that it could. That's the whole reason we're playing Crush, is because it's basically an outcome that can do that. We've also got a bunch of zero-cost things in this deck, so let's say we don't have a Reservoir out. You know, turn 5, we can play a free thing, and then play this for 5 mana, get a huge 8/8 guy, and reset the board for both players. Even if we pick up an Aetherflux Reservoir, we can always wait till next turn, play the Reservoir first, and then play all the zero-cost artifacts again, start storming out. So Crush can still serve that purpose, even though it picks up Reservoir. Here are the lands in the deck. We're playing 20, hey Ziggy, we're playing 22 of them, and that may seem light, but we're drawing an awful lot of cards in this deck, so it's not so bad. We will be drawing into the lands we need a lot of the times, and we don't want to draw lands while we're trying to combo off with like Paradoxical Outcomes. So we don't want to play too many lands in the deck, but we don't want to play too few lands either. It's a fine line. But since we're drawing so many cards, I think 22 lands is fine. Here's the board for you right here, and it's mostly against aggro decks because we do have a weak spot against them. Control we actually do kind of well against. Same thing with mid-range, just any deck that doesn't do a bunch of damage every single turn that they swing in. We're actually, you know, we got some pretty decent game against as long as we can get the combo set up. But aggro gives us a lot of problems because we're basically goldfishing for the first 4 or 5 turns of the game. We don't interact with our opponent like hardly at all, so we're just trying to get set up. And in that time, aggro can just destroy us. So we've got some more interaction on the board. We've got Reflector Mage, we've got Fumigate, we've got another copy of Crush of Tentacles, we've got even Select for Inspection shows up. This card is actually really, really good. So all of that, most of it against aggro. Important though. Now before I go to the power rankings, I'd like to go over a pretty expansive maybe board for this deck. There's a lot of different builds people are talking about, different colors and different ways of getting the combo to go, you know. So I'd like to go over some sort of options that I didn't cover, and I'm sure there's going to be people in the comments that are like, you forgot this, like just let me know if I forget anything. But this is mostly what people are wanting to put in that I didn't. As far as white cards go, people are talking about Chaplain's Blessing. That's pretty obvious. I didn't find the card as good as maybe Terrarian or Prophetic Prism or something we can pick back up. I wanted as many things we can pick back up with outcome as possible. Chaplain's Blessing went out, but I could see it if you got a lot of aggro you're facing at your LGS. Maybe you want to put it in the board. I can see that too. Chaplain's Blessing didn't quite make my cut. Sigarda's Blessing, another white card people are talking about. Or Sigarda's Aid, excuse me. But people are talking about this because you can play equipments like, Cathar's Shield, Bonesaw at instant speed, and you can do that, like I was talking about with Anticipate, you can respond to one equipment with another equipment and get these huge life gain triggers, and it only costs 1 mana. As far as other colors, people are talking about a red deck, and that's got Herald of Kozilek in it to bring down the cost of artifacts, but I don't think we're playing enough artifacts that cost a bunch of mana, other than Reservoir. To really make Herald that good in this deck. Another red card that people are talking about is Spark of Creativity, which I actually think might be really good in this deck, but I'm not playing red, so I didn't try it. Same thing with Expedite, by the way. Expedite and Slip Through Space. Both of these did not make the deck, again, because I want to play more things that pick cards up, and I think that it's close between these kind of cards and Anticipate, but Anticipate, I know it costs 2 more mana, but it's better selection, or it costs 2 mana, but it's better selection, and these require there to be a creature on the field, whereas Anticipate, you can play it no matter what the board state is. So I like that about Anticipate over, Slip and Expedite, which I know people are going to ask about. They are good ideas. Foundry Inspector is a thing that I've seen for this deck. Same thing as Herald of Kozilek. Brings down the cost of artifacts, but I don't know if that's worth it in this deck. And the only other thing that I've got written down here is something I haven't actually seen anybody talk about, but I at least could see experimenting with, and that's Metallurgic Summonings. We're playing a fair amount of instants and sorceries in the deck, and we could play more if we built the deck slightly differently. And we've got some artifacts in the deck too, so I think that Summonings could possibly have a place. I just haven't tried it yet. If anybody wants to test with it, let me know how that works. I think Summonings is a maybe as an alternate sort of win condition. And here are your power rankings, fairly disappointing as they end in a final score of 55 points. But let me just, I always say this with combo decks. Combo decks don't really score well on my system. You know, combo decks only really care about synergy and going off, and that doesn't really lend itself well to high scores in the categories that I tend to list. You know, they want to be consistent, and this deck is a hair below really consistent. You will find times where you just barely don't combo off. You know, you gain 20 life, but you just can't quite get to 50. Your opponent pressures your life total too much. There will be games like that, but there will also be games where you end up casting 8 spells in one turn, you know, 36 life, you're at 50 something, and you just win. You know, the deck does go off a lot, and like I've said, I've tried to build the deck to where the combo is the only priority. That is it. I've seen people build it different ways, but I'm just trying to combo and almost nothing else in my build here. So this is as consistent as I can make it. A lot of people are saying this deck could be tournament worthy. I haven't seen or built a version of it yet that I think will be tier 1 or even 2. You know, I just think this is a really fun combo that exists in the standard, and if it is an important deck, then I will be very happy. But from what it looks like right now, I'm not sure that this deck has the legs to be one of the best decks in the format. But that being said, it's really cheap on TCG Player. All these cards will just cost you about $45 to build, and that includes, by the way, the sideboard. So the board, the lands, the main board, you know, all of it less than $50 by a little bit, and that's the pretty good price for a really fun combo deck that's good whether you're taking it to F&M or whether you're just goldfishing by yourself watching TV or something. Fun deck. Anyway, that's all I've got for this one. Let me know in the comments how you felt about it. Test it out on whatever program you use to test things. I'm not going to name any names. And let me know how you feel or how you change the deck or what other build of the deck you would rather play. Really interested because there's a lot of discussion we can have about this deck because many people are trying to find the right build for it right now, and any discussion we can add to it would be much appreciated. So go down there in the comments and let me know how you feel. And what are we doing next time? Well, I'm not going to give you a choice this time. I'm just going to go ahead and do the deck that all of these spikes want to see. I have gotten a lot of comments to do this deck, especially before tournament results start coming in. Jeskai Control or Jeskai Eldrazi, whatever you want to call it. We're going to try and build that deck next time, and I've been working on it for like 3 weeks now. Got a pretty good build together, so I'll show it to you next time, and we'll see what you think. I'm interested, because that's another deck everybody has a different build for, so I want to know what you guys feel about that one, but we'll cover it next time. Until then, if you enjoyed the content, like it. That does me the most good. Share it. That also helps a lot. And then you can sub for all the deck techs coming up, because there's going to be a lot of them. And I'll see you guys next time. I'm Deb from SBMTG. Thanks for watching, my wizards.